Good afternoon, RCSD families. Thank you for joining us for our final of our parent reopening forums. This afternoon, we'll hear a presentation from our superintendent, Dr. Leslie Myers-Small, and then we'll follow up with some question and answers that were received via email. You may still submit email questions at reopening@rcsdk12.org. Questions will be answered in the order they are received to the extent time allows. You can write questions in Spanish and they will be interpreted. Please visit us at www.rcsdk12.org/reopens for more details and future updates on the district's reopening plans. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Myers-Smalls.
Thank you, Rahima, and good afternoon to everyone. This is our final parent reopening plan forum, and we are so glad that you decided to join us today. This afternoon, we will review information relative to what led up to our decision to shift into a fully remote environment, as well as provide information relative to just what that actually looks like. We are very excited to see that we have many new questions that are submitted, and given our time frame, we will respond to and get to as many as we can. Without further ado, I will transition the presentation to Deputy Superintendent Melody Martinez-Davis.
Thank you, Dr. Myers-Small. Good afternoon to our RCSD family and community. We also want to welcome our Spanish-speaking families that are joining us today and watching our broadcast simultaneously on a Spanish YouTube channel. Bienvenidos. We'll begin the presentation by talking a little bit about the reopening plan that was submitted to New York State on July 31st. The New York State Education Department directed districts to base plans on its guidance document provisions based on the following components: teaching and learning, communication, family and community engagement, health and safety, child nutrition, transportation, social emotional well-being, school extracurricular and interscholastic activities, attendance and chronic absenteeism, special education, technology connectivity, and bilingual education in world languages. So as a district, we had to have a plan that had all of these components and assurances that we could meet each and every one of the state's mandates. So to talk a little bit about the teaching and learning, the plan for New York State Education Department had 3 scenarios. We needed to have a plan for in-person learning for all our students, pre-K through 12, if all of our students came on campus. We also needed to submit a hybrid plan, which included remote learning and in-person learning. Our hybrid plan was where students pre-K through 4 would be in person Monday and Tuesday, or Thursday and Friday, and Wednesdays they would be studying and learning from home. Our 5th through 12th grade would be all remote. We also had to have a remote learning plan in the event that we would need to have pre-K through 12 completely remote learning without coming into the building. On August 7th, Governor Cuomo announced that the levels of COVID-19 were low enough to open schools in New York State. He also wanted districts to post the remote learning plans, testing and contact tracing plans online. He wanted districts to schedule 5 discussion sessions and 5 for the big 5, like the Rochester City School District is, with parents and caregivers before August 21st, And the Governor Cuomo had mandated that school districts had a discussion with staff, which we did on Wednesday, August 19th. Given the criteria around testing and contact tracing, the district has elected to utilize the remote learning model that I just explained for the first 10 weeks of school. This decision was made out of an abundance of caution to ensure the health and safety of all students and staff. Understanding that many parents have concerns about sending their children to school, we had sent a survey to our K through 4 parents before, offering the choice of 100% remote learning option. Based on that feedback, a majority of our parents had chosen the remote learning option rather than the hybrid model of learning. So an urban district of this size has many unique challenges like transportation. As you know, buses are an extension of the classroom, which leads to challenges when socially distancing the number of students we typically transport cannot be accomplished. And most notably, the CDC has indicated there is an increasing evidence that some ethnic minority groups are being disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So our remote learning plan is going to consist of 2 types of learning. It will have the synchronous learning, which is learning that happens in sync with the teacher and the students live. So you have the student and the teachers online at the same time, just like this meeting is happening right now. And we are going to be utilizing tools like Zoom, Teams, Google Meet. We also have asynchronous learning, which is when the student is learning independently and not necessarily logged in on the computer with the teacher or peers. So what is it going to look like for a pre-K through 6 student at RCSD? Weekly instruction provided using a modified schedule that will include large and small group instruction and independent learning opportunities. The large and small group time focus on direct instruction in English language arts, mathematics, and social emotional development, in addition to social studies and science, which will be embedded throughout the learning. Independent learning experiences will supplement the group learning experiences. Elementary teachers will be communicating the schedule to students and families prior to the start of each week. And every effort will be taken to be as flexible as possible while maintaining the equity of access to the instructional program. For our 7th through 12th grade students, you will follow your typical class schedule to ensure consistency and continuity of instruction. This will eliminate conflicts. You will have natural breaks like lunch break built into your day, and it will retain planning time for our teachers. Class periods adjusted to allow for a screen time break will also be provided, and transition time between classes. You will have a combination of large and small group instruction and independent learning each week. Related services and social emotional supports provided will be in the real-time instruction, meaning through that asynchronous instruction or when you're meeting with your teacher and peers, and also during independent learning. For our 7th to 12th graders, each class begins with a group experience that will include a community building time, attendance, and setting the expectations for learning via learning targets. Group learning opportunities for students can be recorded for families to access at a later time if their schedule prevents students from participating during the scheduled time. Independent learning experiences will also supplement those group learning experiences. And again, for our 7th through 12th grade students, every effort will be taken to be as flexible as possible while maintaining the equity of access to the instructional program. So our first day of school, mark your calendars, is September 14th. Elementary school hours across the district will be from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Our secondary schools, your hours will be from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Now we have made a change. All our student superintendent's conference days will be moved to the beginning of the school year, and that will happen from September 8th, 9th, 10th, until September 11th. We're doing this to ensure that our staff receives professional development during those 4 days so that the instruction is robust for our students. So to date, Rochester City School District has made Chromebooks available to students in grades 5 through 12 for the 2020 school year and has provided MiFi devices to families without internet availability. RCSD will assure that every K through 12 student who lacks reliable connectivity has the opportunity to access high-speed broadband with MiFi devices. We are also planning to distribute Chromebooks to students in grades K through 4 from their home schools through the start of the school year in September. MiFis will be distributed to students in grades K through 12 that lack reliable internet service and still do not have them. We want to continue communicating with our families and ensure that you are engaged and in partnership with us. So to receive the most updated information, please visit our website at www.rcsdk12.org/reopen. We also will be utilizing a robocall system like the one we utilized to remind you of this meeting today, in social media to share information with families. We are launching a new Power School Parent Portal app. You'll be receiving information on how to log into that very soon. And this app will help you stay connected with your child's teachers. You'll be able to see their attendance, their progress, their grades. And this app can be uploaded on your smartphone or any other device. We want to make sure that you reach out to your child's school to update any contact information. So if you move, your email change, your phone number change, please make sure that you contact your child or children's school because you do not want to miss any of the information that we will be emailing you or sharing with you through our robocalls. School meals will still be available for students at the locations that you see here on the screen. That's breakfast and lunch. And we will continue to offer food distribution to students at selected sites that will be determined shortly. But right now we have over 20 of these food distribution sites. Our Chief of Operations is here today to answer any questions that you may have about food distribution as well. Resources and referrals are available to address mental health, behavioral, and emotional needs of students, faculty, and staff when school reopens. We will have a designated time for students K through 6 for social emotional learning during morning meetings. That's going to happen on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. We're also going to have an assigned time in our 6 through 12 schedules for our students on social emotional learning and opportunities for check-in and connect on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays as well. Athletic events and practices right now have been postponed until further notice, but please make sure to check on our website for updated information from our Executive Director for Athletics, Mr. Cotto. Attendance will be taken daily, period by period on Power School, and a student will be marked present if a student completes their daily assignment, either online or offline, If a student has a daily check-in and a two-way communication with the appropriate teacher, that way the student will be marked present. Simply not logging in virtually is not a sufficient reason for considering a student absent. If there's no contact with a student, parent, or caregiver, or no evidence of engagement, then the student should be marked absent. When students are unable to participate in live instruction, teachers can use other methods of contact for counting attendance. School personnel must attempt to make contact before marking students absent. And a teacher can change a student's attendance based on evidence of work by that student. So let's talk about our special education program in our Department of Special Education. Each student with a disability in the district will have an individualized distance learning plan written to reflect how the district will implement the student's special education programming and related services in the remote learning model. Case managers will develop the individualized distance learning plans in collaboration with parents and caregivers. Outline programming and services during remote learning will also be provided. So what does the distance learning plan contain? It will have a description of the accessibility or assistive technology needs included in the student's IEP that are needed for the students to access virtual learning. It will outline the program and services that the student will receive during remote learning. It will have an outline of special education accommodations, notifications, and supports included in the student's IEP that will also be provided for the student during distance learning. Students with disabilities will receive daily synchronous instruction provided by both the special education and/or the general education teacher. And remember, the synchronous instruction is when the student is live connected online with their teacher. Additional asynchronous instruction, meaning independent learning, will be provided and supported to address IEP goals and objectives. A DSE parent-student support line for remote learning will be available on a daily basis to assist with asynchronous learning activities and troubleshoot individual learning needs. Students with disabilities will be provided related services as outlined on their IEP through telepractice. Now, RCSD will continue to support bilingual students and English language learners by providing remote learning models consistent with the student's grade level and the instructional plan. So for those students who are still receiving English as a second language services, whether they are pull out or push in, they will still be receiving those services. We have made a great partnership with the City of Rochester, and the R Centers will be opening as learning labs for students in grades K through 6 at the different locations that you see here on the screen. Now, let me just go back to that one and add about a little bit of information about the learning labs. We will have two sections for the learning labs that students can participate in. One is from 8 to 10, and the other one is from 10 to 12. In addition, the rec centers will be open for students to engage in physical activity while still maintaining social distancing and following CDC guidelines. Breakfast and lunch will be provided at the R Centers. So on August 24th, we will be beginning to mail access codes for the new Power School Parent Portal app. On September 1st, we will start mailing student schedules to all our families. And again, we will have those 4 days of staff professional development from September 8th to the 11th for our staff. And once again, our first day of school for our students is September 14th. School calendars will be mailed home in September to reflect these and other most recent dates and changes. The district will continue to reevaluate this and all remote learning decisions through the first 10 weeks of school. Our superintendent, Dr. Myers Small, will continue to work with the Monroe County Health Department on topics like contact tracing and testing for when school resumes in person. And she will be able to give you weekly updates in different platforms. So thank you so much to Ms. Wine and to Dr. Myers for this opportunity.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis. Now we're going to enter into our question and answer session. We have updated the questions with emails that have continued to come in throughout this process. Families, you can continue to email questions and we will add them and address them we will add them and address them as time permits. Our first question is going to be to Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis. The question is, will these questions and responses from the forums be available in an FAQ document to be shared?
Yeah, good afternoon again. So yes, we already have an FAQ on our website, but we are going to be updating that FAQ that we have posted with these questions. Make sure that the ones that we didn't have before that have come throughout the 5 different forms that we have had are added to it. So please continue to visit our website for information.
Thank you. Our next question is going to go to our Chief of Information and Technology, Glenn. Will training be provided for families regarding the technology students will be using?
The literacy skills regarding technology that helped carry our students through the beginning months of COVID back in March, and will continue to extend on those skills. In addition, the district will provide a variety of opportunities for addressing digital fluency, including a digital open house, a meet the teacher, and technology orientation. The district's remote learning portal, RCSD Learns, found on our district's main webpage, includes specific how-to videos for students and families. RCSD Learns will continue to be updated to meet the needs of our community. In addition, if there are still technology gaps, we do have instructional technology teachers on assignment that are willing to call and help families in a variety of modalities.
Thank you. Dr. Myers-Small, we have a question for you. If schools do in fact open in the second quarter, will families have enough time to prepare? How far in advance will families be notified of this?
Thank you for that question, and good afternoon again. So our team will be working with many different stakeholders to meet every 2 weeks to review our progress, how things are going. We'll be looking obviously at current infection rates. We'll be working with the Monroe County Department of Health relative to contact tracing and testing. And we'll be having conversations internally. So our goal is to review all that information, look at the data, and then make a decision in ample time. I'm thinking we would need to do that at least 2 to 3 weeks to give families an opportunity. I know that switching to this remote learning mode certainly was a burden for some of our families, and we do apologize for that. We continue to investigate ways or resources rather for our families to get support should they need that. And we'll be working with the United Way on that, and we'll have a meeting next week or the week after to determine exactly what those resources and supports will look like.
Thanks, we appreciate that. So our next question is going to be for Ms. Elizabeth Reyes, and families, thank you, Deputy Superintendent. So the question is, how are homeless students or those living in shelters being supported during remote learning? And will they continue to receive supports from the Families in Transition program?
Absolutely. We have been providing case management support, assistance with temporary housing, food resources, clothing, Chromebooks to students and families via referrals from school staff and referrals from shelters in our community. Members from shelters and schools will email us the needs of the students and families. We will follow up on these with calls, home visits, as long as it's safe with COVID-19. So our social workers will continue to support our families with mental health support, resources, community resources, as well as crisis intervention. So just continue to work through the social workers that are in the school and the social workers from the transitional programs.
And additionally, can you share with us, for families who have maybe newly experienced housing instability, how they can access this program?
Absolutely. So they would contact their school where the child was going or will be attending, or the shelter that they are in will be able to then contact us. We also have social workers that regularly connect with shelters, and our director for student support services, our executive director for student support services, Elizabeth Reyes, can be contacted at any time too, just by calling our RCSD hotline.
Thank you for that information.
Absolutely.
Next, we have another question for technology. So parents are used to using the RCSD link, which was the online format that allowed them to see their children's teacher, look at schedules, and list contact information. Now that RCSD link is gone, will there be another format that our families can use for this?
Thank you for the question. Great question. Yes, letters for the new Power School parent portal will be going out next week to all of our families. That information will contained in the letters will provide families with the student access code and password. Power School Parent Portal will allow families to view grades, look at assignment information, and view attendance, all in real time.
Thank you for that. I have a question for one of our school chiefs. What efforts are being made? What efforts are being made to include translation into other languages besides Spanish on a regular basis for parent emails and robocalls? And thank you, Chief Green.
Thank you for that question. Good afternoon to our families in the Rochester community. Currently, we are implementing a new system. It's called School Messenger. This will allow for the district and schools to send robocalls and create emails in English and have the ability to translate many of these letters and emails using district to address the district top languages. We will be working with our principals and our clerical staff in our buildings over the next few weeks to roll out this new technology. I'm not sure if Deputy Superintendent Melody Martinez Davis has anything else to add to that.
No, I think you covered it all.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We have our next question for our arts and music department. The question is, I understand instrumental and voice lessons will continue in a virtual environment. What about ensembles, and how can students access these opportunities?
My video is locked, but I will speak.
Oh.
It's okay.
Thank you, Dominic.
No worries. Thanks for the question. Instrumental music and voice lessons will continue in the virtual environment, as will our ensembles. We're currently collaborating with our colleagues throughout the county to determine best practices for virtual ensembles, including a deeper dive into the historical and cultural connections of musical literature, as well as the possibility of utilizing virtual lessons to create tiled video performances, similar to those that many of us have seen on social media and television.
Cool. If Ms. Keisha Morgan, we have a question regarding special education services. How will services be handled for kids with IEPs? Will they be pulled from their class virtual sessions? And if so, can it be mandated that the teacher records the lesson for later viewing?
Thank you. Good afternoon, parents and Rochester community, and thank you for the question. So our students with disabilities will receive related services as outlined on their IEP. I think we're talking about related services here. So students with disabilities will receive, I'll back up a bit, both synchronous and asynchronous instruction as our deputy superintendent outlined in the PowerPoint a bit ago. So they will receive both synchronous and asynchronous instruction by our special education and or general education teachers. During asynchronous instruction, they will receive support during that independent time by our support staff and our teachers. So for our students with related services, which is what I think this question is about, they will receive their services again, as outlined in their IEP through telepractice. Our related service providers will be providing both group therapy sessions and individual sessions, again, as outlined on the IEP. The related service providers will continue to work with classroom teachers to develop the schedule of when students will receive their services, very similar to the way they do now during face-to-face instruction. They will try to the greatest extent possible, similar to the way they do now, to pull students during the time that works best for the class and for the instruction. So during this distance learning time, I imagine and strongly recommend that they will be pulling them during the small group breakout time and also during that asynchronous learning time. So most often that's when they will be providing them with their related services. As far as recording the lessons, it's not going to be mandated that they are recorded, but we will definitely have our teachers and related service providers and support staff that will be able to redeliver and ensure that students have all of the information from any lessons that are missed. Thank you.
Thanks for all of that information. For our school chiefs, there's a question. Parents would like to know, will there be advanced learning opportunities for students?
Good afternoon, Rochester families. Just as if we were in-person instruction, students may participate in advanced learning opportunities. Each school has a process, so I encourage families that would like to take advantage of this advanced learning opportunity to contact your child's teacher and or school so they can help create a plan for enrichment.
Good to know. Thank you. Ms. Webster, I think this next question is going to be for you. Yes. Are school supply lists current on the school's websites?
Great question. Good afternoon and happy Friday to everybody. So schools are currently in the process of reconfiguring their supply lists in order to better meet the needs of remote and synchronous learning. We're actually working directly with the math and ELA department to have a consolidated list that is aligned with the instructional curriculum. So my recommendation is to please contact your school with any questions or needs in regard to school supply lists. And we will be providing updated lists on those school websites in collaboration with principals through the course of next week.
Okay. Chief Green, how you doing? So the next question is going to be for you. And the question is, with 4 hours and 20 minutes of online instructions for 7th and 12th grade students, will there be a limit on the amount of homework given to help avoid student burnout?
Thank you for that question. So although we talk about 4 hours and 20 minutes of virtual learning, that is consistent with the normal school day, that students will still be engaged in the number of periods and time in school to support their academic needs. Homework has always been to reinforce and give students an opportunity to practice what they learn. They will still have that opportunity during asynchronous time, as well as there may be additional homework or practice material that they may want to work on throughout the day, similar to what we currently do if we were in person. Thank you.
Dr. Myers-Small, we have a parent wanting to get a little more information about the program at the R Center, hoping you can help us out. So the question is, can a child attend the R Center 5 days a week? And will they be able to attend both sessions each day?
Thank you for that question, Rahima. I appreciate it. So certainly a child can attend the R Center 5 days a week. We just need to be mindful of the fact that they do need to be engaging in the schedule that's developed just for them, whether they are K through 2, third through 12th. So we need to make sure that they're following the schedule and that they are logging in for that synchronous time. When we talk about the sessions, those are the learning lab sessions. Those will be offered also Monday through Friday from either 8 to 10 or 10 to 12. And we need to, we're developing right now a schedule to see how many families are interested in having their child participate. And yes, there is a limit because our centers have to observe CDC guidelines with the social distancing. So we are working on that, and we should have that finalized very shortly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question is going to be for Chief Peluso. I believe you're next up. So the question is regarding school uniforms. For students who attend schools that require uniforms, are they going to be encouraged to wear them for their synchronized learning?
So each school is going to set their classroom expectations regarding online learning. Uniforms may not be required, they could be encouraged, but there will be a set of classroom expectations that the school will provide during their mailing home to parents for online learning.
Okay. We have an IMT question regarding Zooms. So will students, thanks Glenn, will students have to sign in and out of Zoom during the day, meaning will a student be expected to manage multiple Zoom links, or will they just stay logged into one link all day?
That's a great question. When teachers set up their classroom for the day, they may set it up with just one link. However, if students are going to break out into other specific subject areas, say if there's a music lesson going on or something involving physical education or the arts, that would have to be a different link. But it would be very easy to navigate to because everything should reside within the learning management system, which is going to be for grades 3 through 12, Google Classroom. Links can also be sent to our younger students using the Seesaw app.
Okay. Dr. Hooper, we have a question regarding pre-K. So parents, a lot of parents want to know, how will pre-K work in a remote learning environment?
Hello, good afternoon, families and community members. In the remote learning environment, pre-K will be a blend of virtual online lessons, short lessons, like a morning meeting, 2 small group lessons a day, and a large group lesson. These will be about 15 minutes each in duration. And in addition to that, there will be an hour a day where families and students can access their child's teacher remotely online to ask any questions or receive additional support, or even if a child would like to show the teacher some of the work that they've been doing, that type of thing. In addition to that, we will also be providing kits of hands-on materials for children to engage in hands-on learning projects at home, because we realize that children need a blend of those hands-on experiences as well as the experiences with their classmates and their teachers, which will be both synchronous and asynchronous, as in the example I gave, where the teacher will be available for students and families to access them individually with any questions or to share information, to ask for types of support or anything like that. So it really will be a combination of those things. In addition, families and caregivers will be strongly encouraged to have children engage in at least 30 to 40 minutes of exercise or large muscle movement per day, because we know that's really important for a child's development. So those are some of the activities that we would see throughout the day in a virtual environment, and the types of resources families would receive. In addition to that, we do have a pre-K music teacher who will be providing 2 lessons a week in music for preschoolers. So that kind of rounds out our remote learning plan for pre-kindergarten students. And I would like to share that students who are enrolled in our remote learning program, when the time comes that we do transition into a hybrid model, those students have their seats already assured that they stay in that class and they would transition right in. Thank you.
Thanks. Speaking of activities, next we're going to go over to Dr. Cotto from athletics and probably Dominic again from arts and music. Families wanted to know about extracurricular activities. So specifically, parents' son is newly enrolled 3rd grader, and they're wondering what extracurricular activities opportunities will there be?
Yes, thank you for the question, and good afternoon, Rochester families. As a district, we are exploring our options to maintain continuity with extracurricular activities where possible. However, activities such as interscholastic sports are on hold until further notice. We are also working with our community organizations and the Department of Recreation and Youth Services in an effort to connect our students with programs that are taking place within our community. Families, if you are seeking information related to community programs, please contact the Department of Recreation and Youth Services at 428-6771. Thank you.
Thanks, Rahima. I'm going to take the chance to do a shameless plug here. So the Pride of Rochester Marching Band will continue to meet weekly via Zoom to rehearse virtually, as well as to meet with HBCU marching band directors and musicians. And the Rock City Players Theater program will also continue to meet weekly via Zoom to work on their acting and singing skills, along with also meeting virtually with theater professionals throughout the country. And if you'd like more information about that, you can visit the RCSD Arts website, and staff contact info is on there for both of those groups. And then along with what Carlos said, our community partners are also working to provide support as they've been doing in the past, such as Rock Music and Eastman Pathways. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. Dr. Cotto, do you mind jumping back on and just giving that phone number one more time in case parents missed it? Thanks.
Yes, the number is 428-6771.
All right, thank you for that. We have a question again regarding advanced classes of one of our school chiefs. I think it's Chief Webster now. How is it going to be determined that a student is able to participate in advanced classes? And this came from elementary parents, so they want to know, is that even an option for elementary students?
Yeah. So generally in elementary schools, and this will be true for all of our schools, teachers will run a set of diagnostics at the onset of the year to determine student skills and knowledge. Following that, they generally create systems and groups that they're able to provide both acceleration and remediation as needed by the student. So we would really encourage the parent to stay in constant communication with the teacher to gain the specifics of the classroom systems as well as opportunities within the school. All of our elementary schools will also have a multi-tiered systems of support for students. It's a block where students will be able to engage in a variety of structures, which could also include acceleration and enrichment. Lastly, for secondary schools, our schools offer honors, AP, and dual credit. So it will be important for parents to connect with school counselors to ensure that their students are placed in those classes based on their achievement or request.
Thanks. We have a question regarding homeschooling, which I know has been a popular conversation lately. So thank you, Terry, for jumping on there. The question is, the parents are considering homeschooling, but they're not quite sure yet if they want to do that or remote learning. How will they, if they decide to homeschool, when is the letter of intent due and what is that process like?
So good afternoon, Rochester families. Thank you for this question. Letters of intent for homeschooling are due as soon as you decide to homeschool your child. These letters can be submitted via email, and we've set up an email, homeschool@rcsdk12.org. So just homeschool is one word, HOMESCHOOL @rcsdk12.org. Since your child is already a student within the district, if you choose to homeschool, you include your child name, date of birth, and grade level in the email. And then the homeschool department will respond to you. Nancy Eichner is the director of homeschool this year, and either she or someone on her team will respond to your email.
Thanks. I have another question for Chief Keisha Morgan. A parent is interested in learning more about language programming. So they just moved here from Jamaica in June, and their child has not yet been assessed in our programming, and they want to know, will they be provided with supports or speech classes?
Okay, so a couple of things with this question. Thank you so much for it. So if a student had an IEP in Jamaica or any other country, then when you come here, the parent would go to the Office of Student Placement and work with one of my special education directors that's located in that office. The special ed director would work directly with our parents and would review the IEP and develop comparable programming and services that would meet the student's needs. So that would include speech services. So that's how we would do that if the student had an IEP from another country. If the student did not have an IEP and is an English language learner, you would do the same thing. You would meet with student placement, and we have a language assessment team in student placement, and they would evaluate the needs of the student and develop a plan to support the student in that way.
Thanks for that information. Dr. Myers-Small, we have a parent wanting to know, why does RCSD feel it's safe for kids to return to rec centers and daycares, but not schools?
That is really a good question, and I appreciate that being posted. So when we decided to shift to remote learning, when we were in the process of shifting to remote learning, one of the things that I was concerned about was having safe places for students to go should their parents be essential workers, or it's mandated for them to go to work. And so I had a conversation with the city of Rochester, and that this was an option. So again, going to our centers is not mandated, but it's an option for families, for parents, for caregivers, should they want to have their child go to a safe place. Same thing with daycare. That is the family's choice and their option.
Okay. If you could stay with us for just a second,
Sure.
kind of follow up to that question. A parent wanted to know, how does RCSD respond to the parent's concern that the budget savings was the primary reason for the switch to remote learning?
So I can certainly understand why one or more families might believe that to be so, but it is absolutely not. We spent a lot of time talking with other school districts. The Rochester City School District is a member of the Big Five school districts in New York. And those are the 5 largest districts. So they're New York City in order from largest to smallest. So it goes New York City is the largest, Buffalo is the second largest, Rochester is the 3rd largest, Syracuse is the 4th, and Yonkers downstate is the 5th. And so we were having many conversations, and actually the Buffalo Public School District actually just went remote a few days ago. They made the announcement to do that. And as I've articulated, Rochester, even though we have other districts that are contiguous, so they're next to or nearby to us, are going hybrid, the size is really a determining factor as well. So there were many decisions that went into it, but certainly not trying to save money for the budget. I completely recognize and honor that in-person instruction is the best possible way for our students to learn. But this was really done out of abundance of caution and care relative to safety, and it was the decision that we landed on, but not correlated to making a budget decision. And that's something that, frankly, I would need to run through the Board of Education as well. So, no.
Thank you for that information.
You're welcome.
Dr. Green, we have a question regarding scheduling of virtual learning. Parents are wondering, why are we only providing virtual learning on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday when children are accustomed, and teachers, to learning Monday through Friday?
Thank you for that question. As we move to this remote learning, we have to recognize the number of hours that children are on screen time. And so when we put the schedule together, it worked to reduce the amount of screen time expected for children on a daily basis. It also gives children and families an opportunity to do some of the work that they have to complete, such as one of the questions was about homework. Are they going to have reduced amount of homework? Wednesdays will be an opportunity to do homework, as well as office hours will be available for teachers. So students and families still have the opportunity to connect with our teaching staff and follow up on supports that they may need during the week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rahima, if you don't mind, I just want to add to this question from what Dr. Green responded to. We also are working, I just met with the Rochester Museum and Science Center, and they have lots of virtual experiences. They're science related, which there's nothing wrong with that. You can't get too much science. I'm a firm believer in that. But lots of experiences from our youngest learners, so pre-K and kindergarten, all the way up to high school. And some of them are like virtual field trips or virtual experiences or ways that are connected to math, science, technology content. So once we have all of that information curated, and they're actually working to help us not only they're going to provide the resources from their local area, but they're connected to planetariums and science centers all over the country. So they're going to work with us to give us information, and it's specifically for asynchronous time, but also for Wednesday. So I just wanted to share that as well, Dr. Green.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. We have a question for Chief Peluso, and maybe Glenn, you might want to jump in too. We know that school ended, we ended in-person instruction in March. And so there's a question regarding how are we going to ensure that students are provided with adequate time to catch up? We know that all students didn't have access to technology during that time. And so there's just the concern that they may not be ready for the new school year.
Yeah, I truly respect that question. Unfinished learning opportunities is a concern for many of our families across the district and across the country. Our teaching and learning department has been working extremely hard at looking at standards that connect previous year's learning to this year's learning to ensure that students are getting current grade level instruction, but are enhanced with last year's standards as well.
Glenn, you want to add on to that?
All I would say is I think this was a problem seen throughout the entire country as buildings closed, not unique to Rochester. We made a concerted effort for students that didn't have technology to be provided educational paper pencil materials. But it is a challenge we're going to face as we move into the new school year, as Dr. Peluso alluded to. And again, I think he answered the question and hit all the right buttons.
Thanks for that. Chief Webster, will teachers be teaching from their classrooms or from their homes?
So currently, all teachers are teaching remotely, so from outside of the classroom. And we will be working with our principals to create and implement a needs assessment for their staff to consider, what are some of the needs from teachers and other staff members in regard to use of space within the building or other buildings within the district. Once we have that information, we will devise a plan that will include opportunities for teachers to use their classrooms.
Okay. Thank you for that information. So Chief Green, kind of in the same vein, what are going to be the expectations for children in their homes in terms of like their learning area and lesson space?
Thank you for that question. My colleague, Dr. Peluso, alluded a little bit to this when he was addressing the question around school uniforms. So schools will provide etiquette around virtual learning, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate when you're on screen and what you should do. In terms of when you're in your house, part of our social emotional learning period will be to work with families as well. If a family has multiple students and they're trying to figure out the best way to make sure all of their children are on at a certain time, how can we provide support to them to give them recommendations and suggestions? But within their own homes, it's going to be very important for them to have space already earmarked for each child to work and complete their assignments, to log on their devices. As Mr. Vanderwaters mentioned earlier, all students will have access to devices, so families won't have to worry about children sharing the device and who's on and who's not on. And so all of those things could be worked together with the family and the teacher staff. Thank you.
Speaking of Mr. Vanderwater and IMT and a little bit about etiquette with Zoom, we have a question regarding the use of virtual backgrounds. And thanks, Chief Webster, you can probably chime in too. The use of virtual backgrounds or like blurring your screen. I know there's been questions and concerns about protecting families' privacy in their home and other people there. So will students be allowed to have virtual backgrounds or to blur their background?
So I'm going to begin by piggybacking on the statements previously made by Chief Peluso and Chief Green. The culture of learning really matters. So whether we're brick and mortar or remote, our teachers are going to work with our students and really ask support from our families to build that culture of learning where people are respected and safe and able to follow the specific directions and adhere to norms that allow for learning to happen. And we know that that is important brick and mortar, and it's equally important in a virtual world. And we've had to adjust to all of those structures as adults. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Chief Vanderwater, so he can explain the technology specifics.
I think that's a fantastic question and such a legitimate concern for our families. We have put in some security measures into the Zoom environment, giving the teacher, just like in traditional brick and mortar, really control over that learning environment. To specifically answer your question about virtual backgrounds, we will not be allowing virtual backgrounds. That will be blocked. Direct messaging will also be blocked, but the teacher has the ability to turn it back on. The teacher also has the ability, as the leader of that learning environment, to turn off a student's webcam. And while they can turn it back on if there is a continued distraction, a teacher can move a student back into the waiting room and address that, whatever distraction that may be.
Okay. You brought up a good point about being able to control the camera. Will students be able to turn off their cameras as well?
Students will have the ability to turn off their cameras, yes.
Thank you for that information.
You're welcome. Great question.
Superintendent Myers-Small, what tangible supports, and you kind of spoke to this a little bit, but what tangible supports are being offered to families to facilitate their children's education?
Thank you for that. So under the leadership of our Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Dr. Janelle Morris, she created an RCSD academic continuity plan. And the principles of the plan are to maintain health and safety, to ensure that there's high quality learning, that there's equity, so we provide the best learning environment to meet the needs of all students, stakeholder engagement, so to make sure that we ground our work in meeting the needs of students and staff, families, and the community, because this is a new norm and a new reality. And then fluidity and continuous improvement, so using best practices, research-based insights, and continue to be responsive based on new learning as well as changing circumstances. So given those principles of the academic continuity plan, Dr. Morris has facilitated the learning of these individuals to move forward to address educational needs. And so they have work groups that align with professional development and training, family communication and technology, virtual learning and grading, support for ELL students, special ed students, etc. And so under her leadership, they are building a guidance document that will help articulate, in particular, the supports that may be needed for our families as they help their students in this new normal. I didn't know if there was anything else, Dr. Morris, that you wanted to add.
Thank you, Dr. Myers-Smalls. That was very comprehensive, and it covered the work of the sub-work group committees that have been focused on a safe reopening of schools, but also to make sure that the academic plan is focused and targeted to support our students during the time of the reopening under a virtual learning model. So as you've mentioned, all of the work that we've done to focus on reopening have been centered on the core aspect of health and safety and academics and learning. And so we are focused on high quality student learning, making sure that we are accelerating student learning and that we are connecting and picking up any pieces that may have been, not continuity from the prior year. We're trying to make sure that all of our materials are presented in the learning environment to preserve equity. And we're making sure that the academic pieces that are presented for our students meet the standards in New York State and in a format that can be delivered in a virtual environment. So the work groups are focused on creating a plan that will be shared with our school communities and with our family communities that will allow us to define and provide guidance in the areas of learning, instruction, support for all of our students, and making sure that we're providing information for assessment strategies and support for all of our students, as well as focusing on supporting the socio-emotional needs of our students in this new entry into this new environment.
Thank you for that very comprehensive answer. I have a next question for Glenn. You're Mr. Popular today. So everybody's been talking about the news forums, and that there was conversation about the shipment of Chromebooks being halted due to some customs issues. The question is this going to affect RCSD, knowing that all our students still need to, a lot of our students, still need to get Chromebooks? And if so, do we foresee a delay in the first day of school?
Well, I'll just say Rochester has positioned itself well, even prior to COVID-19, in terms of device management. And we always are working to ensure now that we're moving to a K-12 deployment model that every student will have the opportunity to receive a Chromebook that needs a Chromebook. To specifically address some of the shipment issues, we placed a refresh order to refresh out some of our older Chromebooks back in April. We were given a shipment delivery date of end of November, first week in December. I confirmed yesterday that shipment date has not changed. They are still on pace to arrive here, so that our Dell 11-inch and some of our other Chromebooks that are ready to be recycled and refreshed will be in position, well in position to do that.
Okay. So then that means there will be no delay in the first day of school, correct?
There will be no delay in the first day of school.
Thank you for clarifying that. Deputy Myers-Small. I know you've talked a little bit about it earlier on and in some of the questions, but what is the clear, explicit, and objective criteria that needs to be met for students to return to in-person instruction after the 10 weeks?
Rahima, I just have to start by saying you just gave me a demotion, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my apologies.
It's all good. It's all good. I had to just add a little levity. It's all good. You're fine. So just to reiterate, we're looking at several factors. We need to look at what the current infection rates are in the county, in the city. We need to, again, find out what happened with the other big five that I mentioned across the state that are large school districts. We also work with, we're in a consortium called the Council of Great City Schools. So those are large urban school districts to see. And again, I'm constantly interacting with Dr. Mendoza from Monroe County Health. We also need to, Health Department, we also need to, I lost my train of thought, I'm so sorry. Oh, we also need to be aware of contact tracing and testing to see how that has maybe morphed and changed over the days and the weeks leading up to our decision. But again, the goal is for us to meet with regularity at intervals and not just wait until a few weeks before the 10 weeks are up to have conversations. And then we'll make a decision whether we can shift into hybrid or do we remain in remote for another 10 weeks.
Thanks for that information.
You're welcome. I had to mess with you.
I know, I appreciate it. Glenn, another question for you. If student has changed schools and they didn't receive a Chromebook, where will they be picking theirs up from?
Okay, so we did have some students, we started deploying in grades 4 through 12 last year. Our fourth graders had become fifth graders. So for whatever reason, some students declined taking a Chromebook home. They didn't want to have a device because they already had one, or for whatever reason, they just declined getting one. Maybe their circumstances have changed. All they have to do is contact 262-8700, and the operators there will take down the student's information, and this is for students in grades 5 through 12, and a Chromebook will be deployed to the child's home school, and they'll be able to pick up their Chromebook there. If there's transportation issues, we can work out having a Chromebook delivered to the home, utilizing building administration. Lots of our teachers have been volunteering, parent liaisons. So if there are transportation inhibitors, please let the operators know, and we'll make sure to have one delivered to the home. For our students in grades K through 4, of course, I may have said this earlier, we're going to be doing a deployment model where our families will be able to pick up their child's Chromebook at their home school. The Chromebooks will be organized by the child's homeroom.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. Terry, I know you answered a question earlier about homeschooling. I'm hoping you can help us out a little bit with this next one. So can you talk a little bit about the difference between homeschool and remote learning? And what does a parent need to do if they want to homeschool?
So homeschooling, when we have homeschooling, the parent is in full charge of the learning and has to take ownership of the learning, is responsible for submitting the letter of intent, is responsible for submitting the instructional plan, the individualized homeschool instructional plan. It's called an IHIP, is how we refer to it. And then they have to send in quarterly reports. So every quarter they'll submit reports, and then they have to do an annual evaluation as well. For further information, you can reach out directly to the homeschool department. Again, it's 262-8492, 262-8492, or the email is homeschool@rcsdk12.org. And again, Nancy Eichner is the director this year, and she or her team will help you in the process. We have our website as well. There's right on the RCSD K-12 website, there is a homeschool page that will walk you through all of this and give you exemplars and examples of every piece that you have to submit in that along the way. But if you would like to speak to someone directly, you can call 262-8492 and they will help you with the process.
Thank you for that. Can one of our school chiefs speak to students who are honor students or high performance students? And what's the plan to enrich them during this remote learning?
Another great question. And I believe Chief Webster had spoke a little bit about this earlier. In the elementary schools, our teachers will be doing diagnostic assessments early on just to make sure that they're providing instruction at the students' current levels. And then at the secondary schools, we have our honor sections, our AP sections as well continuing. But always our teachers will differentiate instruction to provide opportunities for students to enrich their learning, just like when we are in typical instruction in school.
Okay. Superintendent Myers-Small, I know that before we went to remote learning, there was the hybrid and parents were going to opt in or opt out. And so parents are wanting to know that after the 10 weeks, will students still have the opportunity to remain remote for the remainder of the school year?
Absolutely, yes. The governor was very clear with his expectations relative to the importance of options. And we just also have to keep in mind that even if we decide, at whatever point we decide to go hybrid, or if we go full physical attendance in school, if an executive order comes down from him, we have to follow that executive order. And that's what made us go remote back in March. So I just want to make sure we're mindful that could, and we need to be prepared for, because it could happen again.
Okay. And then I believe it's Chief Webster, if you could talk a little bit about the plan. Parents want to know, how will teachers be held accountable for maintaining contact and class schedules with students? So what will happen if a student's not checking in?
Okay, great. So the first step is to remember that both teachers and students are following a schedule. That is very different from the closure process, because everybody has a schedule. The student has one and the teacher has one. And we will ensure that teachers are working in collaboration with their principals and assistant principals to follow that schedule and request any support that might be needed. So there will be very clear attendance guidance. So kids need to attend class, and when they don't attend class, we'll have a system of marking the attendance. And then schools have also devised tiered systems to engage kids. So whether it begins with a robocall and then a follow-up from the teacher, and then streamline that to more follow-up depending on the need of the student. And we really ask and want to work with our parents to engage our students in the learning every day for every class, because it's just so critical to the work that we're trying to lift.
So we're going to volley the next question over to Chief Green, and it's aligned somewhat with the previous question. How will teachers be evaluated to determine the quality of education is being provided to students?
Thank you for that question. So a couple of things will occur in remote learning that is similar to when we were in person. One of the tools that will allow principals to ensure that quality instruction is happening is through walkthroughs, which is typical when we were in person. But even in the virtual environment, principals will be visiting classrooms. There will be a set of expectations. What are we expecting to happen in that virtual environment? The learning that should be occurring. And so principals and administrators will be visiting classrooms in the virtual learning environment. In addition to that, there will be pacing guides and standards that are expected to be taught that has been developed from our teaching and learning department. And so teachers will be expected to implement those learning modules, pacing guides, so that the principals will know what's expected to be taught in the classrooms, and then they can visit those classrooms on a very regular basis. That will ensure that high quality teaching and learning is happening in our remote learning environment. Thank you.
Thanks.
I also would like to add that this is another great opportunity for our building leaders to build relationships with their students as well throughout these virtual learning walkthroughs.
Thank you.
Thanks. I believe it's Chief Peluso now, but I could be wrong. I have another question. So parents want to know, how will they be kept up to date on the status of their students' education? And then kind of aligned with that is there a clear, open, consistent path for parents to report problems or request any additional help?
So always go to your child's teacher for the most up-to-date information about what is happening instructionally with your son or daughter. I would say that if you're not getting answers that you would like, to contact the school's administration and the school principal. And there's always the district hotline at 262-8700. We also have some ways to utilize technology to keep abreast of how our students are doing. So I'm going to ask Chief Vanderwater to kind of provide some information about that.
Sure, thank you. As we talk, excuse me, as I had talked about a little bit earlier in our conversation, we do have the new Power School Parent Portal that is integrated directly in with our student management system. And it's going to provide real-time data for our families, taking a look at assignments, grades, even attendance. So it would be a really important application to utilize during this time, and any time, to be honest. It gives all the information that I think the parent needs at their fingertips. And again, I can't stress enough, if anyone is feeling like they cannot access the resources online, to please call the 262-8700 number so we can get resources to our families. Thank you.
One quick question. Oh, thanks for saying that.
I'm back.
So for students who are new to the district, especially high school students specifically, because they had already had Chromebooks prior to this, if you're new to the district, how would the high schoolers receive a Chromebook?
They would receive the Chromebook in the same modality that we're going to deploy to all of our students from this point forward. And that'll be a deployment model from the student's home school. If there's any concern, as Dr. Peluso or Chief Peluso had talked about earlier, please contact the school first. Again, call the 262-8700 number. But we are going to ensure that even our new entrants have a device so that they can begin to engage in instruction on the first day of school.
Okay, thanks for that.
All right.
We have a question for Chief Schmidt. So parents are wanting to know, in regards to our centers, learning labs, will there be any transportation provided to get students to and from the learning labs?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And special thank you to our parents for working so hard with us in terms of getting our children taken care of. Unfortunately, this time we will not be providing transportation to the learning labs at the R centers, but we will certainly take it under consideration as time moves on here.
Okay. We have a question regarding pre-K for Dr. Hooper. If a pre-K child is going to daycare 2 days a week per se, as long as they're completing their assignments as well, they will not be marked absent. Is this correct?
That is correct. The child would not be marked absent. You know, even if the parent wanted to do the activity, some of them will be recorded later in the day after childcare. That would still count too. We do realize that there are situations that require flexibility.
Thank you. So I want to say thank you to all of our parents who have submitted questions, who have watched the forums. As it has been mentioned, please be sure to continue to keep your contact information up to date so that you can receive emails from us, robocalls and other communications, as well as you can follow us on social media for the district's main page, or you can follow, or should I say, you should follow the Office of Parent Engagements page on social media. There you'll be able to find up-to-date information about things going on in the district, as well as reaching out to your parent liaisons or homeschool assistants. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Myers-Small for a few closing words. Thank you all.
Thank you. We first need to give a round of applause. Come back on, Rahima. Let's give her a round of applause or raise the roof. Thank you for being a wonderful, wonderful facilitator. You did an amazing job, and I just want to thank you for that. Thank you. I also want to thank all of the individuals that you see several names and you see lots of claps coming up on the screen. But there were dozens of individuals who went into making this happen. And so I'd be remiss not to thank certainly my executive cabinet for coming on and responding to questions, because it was really important for us, for you to hear information from the cabinet and other administrators and leaders where you could get the information firsthand rather than have someone say, well, I think, or I'm not sure. Most, if not all of your questions were able to be answered. So I want to thank them. The other folks that I want to thank are the ones that you don't see, but makes all the magic happen. And that's our staff in the communications office. They do all the streaming and make sure that they're filtering the questions as they're coming in. So I want to give them thanks as well. This truly has been a team effort. And as I mentioned, Rahima represents the Office of Parent Engagement. So I want to thank Rahima and Khadijah and all those, Shelley and others who were involved in helping to make this happen. We certainly know that this is not easy, starting the school year in a very different way. We did not expect to be at this place, and yet we are. We are grateful that we are able to work together and to put together learning plans that will be successful, that will be accessible, and that will be meaningful for your child. We want to keep the lines of communication open. And so if you certainly have questions, your first line of information is your child's principal or program administrator. But if you have specific questions relative to special ed, you can reach out to Chief Keisha Morgan and her team. If you have bilingual, ELL, multilingual questions, you can reach out to Deputy Superintendent Melody Martinez-Davis and her team, Abel and Anali. But we want to make this doable and we want to make this workable. But we thank you for taking time on a Friday to spend time with us. And we hope that it was informative. We hope that we were able to answer your questions. This recording, a recording of this exchange is going to be uploaded along with the other ones. So please, if you feel like you need to go back or look for some information, do that. As Melanie shared, we do have a frequently asked questions, or FAQ, that will be updated with the questions that you asked. And we are just looking forward to starting the school year with your child. And I'll end by saying we appreciate that you trust us with your most valued treasure, and that is your child. And so we are working incredibly hard to make sure that when school starts on September 14th, it is a great first day. We thank you. Enjoy your Friday and have a good weekend. Take care, everyone.